Hi Sam. Hi Paul. Hi John. How are we all doing? Hi Izzy. Hi Nick. Hi everyone. Welcome to the fourth edition of the A Stroke of Luck live session, the Friday Lives. I hope everybody has had a good week and has been able to enjoy some of the beautiful weather. Certainly in the UK, it's been fabulous weather. Today it's incredibly windy, and where we live, we're we're between the North Wales coastline and the Wirral Peninsula, and it's incredibly windy. So apologies if there's a little bit of disturbance with noise, but yeah, it's whistling through our conservatory windows at the moment. So yeah, a little bit windy, but nevertheless the sun is shining, so we can't complain at all. Great to see so many people joining this live session. We've had people over the past few weeks from the UK. We've had people from Australia join us, America, South America, and through Europe as well. So it's great to have this platform to have a conversation with fellow stroke survivors, and also people that are really interested in supporting people in life after stroke. So before I move on with today's guest, which I'm incredibly excited to be having a conversation with him, I want to take the opportunity really to just say a few thank yous. First thank you is to all of you that are supporting me and A Stroke of Luck. We are very young, we're just over a year old, so your support is greatly needed, and thank you ever so much indeed. I really appreciate it. And as you know, because I mentioned it a few times, the partnership with the Stroke Association is incredible, and I'm very proud to be working with some exceptional people. So I think it's very important that I highlight those and say thank you for the work that they are doing. So, as you know, we are creating stroke-specific exercise activity videos for the benefit of stroke survivors. And that's what we're doing in partnership with the Stroke Association. The team that we got at A Stroke of Luck, the experts that are busy creating the content, I just want to say a huge thank you to them. Their expertise is going to shine through in these videos. So I'm incredibly proud that we've managed to amass such amazing people. I also want to say a huge thank you to Meg from Ubiquity Group, who has been busy editing the videos that we are co-producing between the Stroke of Luck and the Stroke Association. So a big thank you to Meg. And also to the Stroke Association themselves. This week, I know that the guys there have been working incredibly hard. So you met Chris. Chris was my guest last week on the Friday Live sessions. You all got to meet and to hear from him. So a huge thank you to him. And also his colleagues, Kate and Charlotte. The work that's going on, honestly, behind the scenes is incredible. So, I wanted to take this chance to say thank you very much. Okay, so I can't quite believe that I've got this opportunity, but we have an incredible gentleman about to join us as our guest, Michael Lynagh. I'm absolutely certain you'll all know who he is. I certainly watched him as I was growing up, doing his stuff on the rugby field, and I'm delighted to say that a stroke survivor, a Rugby World Cup winner, Rugby World Hall of Fame inductee is just about to join me in this live. So if you just bear with me a second, I'll make sure that Michael's on, and I will invite him in to join me. Right, here we go. Right. I can see that Michael is watching, but at the moment it just says unable to join. Not too sure why that is. Michael, I don't know whether it's anything to do with your privacy settings, but it says that you're unable to join this live at the moment. So maybe if you dip out of it and then come back in, that might work. Technology, it beat me in the first week as well when we were doing this. Yeah, it's still saying, Michael, that you're unable. Can everybody hear me okay? The wind's not too loud. Here we go. Michael's just about to join us now.
There we go.
Hello, Michael.
Oh dear. I've had to change machines. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. How are you?
Sorry about that.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Stroke of luck on this live.
Thank you. Great to be here, Craig. Sorry about the technical hiccups. I actually asked two of my sons to come down and help me out. But they said, Dad, it's really easy. All you have to do is press a button and you'll do it. So they're busy doing other stuff. So anyway.
Nice.
How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you. Yeah, not doing so bad at all. Enjoying the beautiful weather. I was just saying it's a little bit windy here up in the Wirral at the moment, but no, the weather's grand. So yeah, no, everything's going really well, thank you. Really, really well.
That's good.
So, obviously, just gave a little bit of an introduction about yourself, Michael. World Cup winner, stroke survivor, Rugby World Hall of Famer. And I want to break this live session, if possible, down into 3 parts. A bit about your rugby career, then a bit about your stroke, and then a little bit about kind of exercise, if that's all right, because that's what we're focused on as a charity. So I'm going to start off with your rugby career. And after reading your book, Blindsided, I was really interested to read around your single best moment of your playing career was, and I'm going to apologise now for anybody that's listening from Ireland or any Stroke Survivors there tuning in, but your single best moment was the one that shattered the dreams of a nation. And what we're talking about there is your 1991 quarter-final for Australia against Ireland, when you scored a try in the last few minutes to send you through to the semi-final. So if that's your greatest moment on a rugby pitch, what would you rank as your second and third favourite moments?
Well, I think that, you talk about moments, and that was sort of probably a minute at most, or 2 or 3 minutes at most. So that particular incident was probably, it was about getting the team together and getting over adversity, etc. And that was a great sort of part of my career. But I guess there's been overriding sort of achievements that are bigger than just one moment on the pitch. And, things like the 84 Grand Slam tour that I was a part of and played in all the tests there. And that was the first and only time Australia's ever done that. That was back in 1984. Then the Bledisloe Cup, we won a series of 3 tests over in New Zealand. Won 2 out of 3 of those, which hadn't been done before or since, really. And so, then winning the World Cup in the 91 one you mentioned, that's sort of a great achievement that, is right up there as well. So I've been part of some wonderful teams, etc. In terms of moments on the pitch, there was one in the 86 Bledisloe Cup series, and it was in Auckland in the third and deciding test. And it was quite a wet and sticky sort of muddy day at Eden Park, and we got a penalty in the second half. And I remember it was quite a way out. Leather balls in those days was quite heavy, and it was right on the cricket pitch. Eden Park had a cricket pitch in the middle, so that was sort of a bit gluey as well. And I decided to have a kick at goal, and we got it. And it took us 2 scores away from New Zealand. And at that stage, I sort of knew that at that stage we'd won it. We'd won the Bledisloe Cup in New Zealand in the deciding 3 tests. So that was a great moment as well on the pitch.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to have many of them. So far more than bad moments, put it that way.
Very good, very good. So you retired from international rugby in 1995. You'd amassed 72 caps for Australia, which is, a heck of an achievement. And at that time, you were the world record point scorer in international rugby with 911 points. That is a remarkable achievement, Michael. So to make the decision to retire from international rugby, how did you cope with that emotionally?
Pretty well, actually. I'd played, as you've alluded to in those days, I played for quite a long time, and in those days we had tours with Australia and Queensland and what have you. So the number of tests was 72, but the number of games I actually played for Australia was probably up around 100. because of the number of tour games we had. So, and I'd been playing sort of international rugby since 1982 through to 95. And I'd sort of had enough, really. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. And I was always of the view to play as long as I could. And, you know, because you're a long time retired, and, you know, didn't want to be one that sort of retired and then came back and didn't, wasn't quite right and all that sort of thing. So I went quite a long time. And 95, you know, I got married in 1996. I'd worked throughout my career outside rugby as well. So it was time to open a new chapter in my life. And, you know, while I might have retired from, you know, international rugby in 95, I had 2 years here in England professionally.
With Saracens.
Professional. I went to Saracens, which was a lovely new chapter. You know, came here when we got married, and had 2 good years with Saracens. Well, one better than the other. And then in 98 retired from rugby full stop. And a week later I was back in an office working. And so the change was quite substantial. But unlike a lot of players now who obviously got a lot more money than get a lot more money than what I ever did. But my bonus was that I'd worked throughout my career. So when I'd finished, I had something to go to, and I wanted to go and do that. And, you know, we started that here in London, and we're still here, sort of 23 years later and 3 boys later, and etc. And we love being here. So I coped with it because I had something to go to, and I wanted to go and do that. It was a new chapter. Yeah. That's not to say it wasn't easy. I mean, you know, I give example, when I finished at Saracens and went to work, my wage dropped by 2/3. And so going from sort of something that you were at the top of the sort of the world of at that time, down to being somebody who was just part of an office and being told what to do every day. It was a different, and waking up at, you know, going to the office at 7:30 in the morning, coming home at 7:30 at night. It was a different sort of environment, but one I wanted to jump into, and I was ready to finish up with rugby.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So your children, are they Australia fans or are they England fans? They're fans they were born in England.
It's interesting. The 2 oldest ones were born in Italy.
Right.
My wife's Italian, and we were over there when they were born. And the youngest one was born here, but you'll have to ask them. But let's put it this way: I think they go for England first. Australia first, Italy second, and then England third.
Really? The reason I ask is I'm born in England, represented Scotland. My mum's Scottish in swimming. My wife's a South African, and both of my daughters are both born in England, but they choose South Africa over England. So in the recent World Cup final, I was the only England fan in the house. My wife and my daughters were all sporting South Africa kits.
Oh gosh, oh dear, that would have been hard work, I'd imagine. I mean, you said you're from born in Scotland. My grandfather on my mother's side was Scottish. He was from a small place just outside Glasgow. So, you know, so I've got a lot of Scottish heritage as well as Irish as well.
Oh, fantastic. So if we fast forward then, so you retired from rugby in 1998, launched yourself or was going back into the office and into the world of business. Fast forward to April the 18th, 2012. You just flown in, is this right, from Singapore, having business in Singapore, had a round of golf with your dad and a couple of mates back in Brisbane, went out for dinner for some steak, had I think you're quoted as saying a couple of light beers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, during the course of that meal is where you became unwell, and ultimately it culminated in you being taken into the hospital in Brisbane. So you found out at hospital, I think, Michael, that, you know, they announced to you that you'd had a stroke. So how did you feel when you were told that you'd just had a stroke? How did that make you feel?
I was pretty shocked, and it's a pretty good summary of what happened. There's a lot of other stuff that went on around all that sort of contributed to it. But I was fairly jet lagged and pretty tired, and, you know, dehydrated and all that sort of thing. And I just thought, you know, it was a bit of really bad jet lag and a bit dizziness. And I mean, but the pain in my head and the fact that I couldn't see and all these sort of things was telling me that something was not right. So that's when, you know, we called the ambulance, went to the hospital, and you're right. I thought, you know, logically, I thought I'm fit and healthy, and you know, just give me a tablet, bit of rest, and I'll go home and sleep it off. And But I knew it was more than that. I knew it was something more than that. But then the doctor came out and said you'd had a stroke, and we're going to have to operate. That's when it really hit home. You know, it was the oh my God moment that, you know, my God, they're going to take the back of my head off and reduce the swelling and all that sort of thing. And that's when I got very, you know, it was quite a tough period. But you know, you just don't think it's going to happen to you. And particularly me, I was sort of relatively young, relatively fit, and all those sort of things. And it did. A series of circumstances sort of conspired to almost a perfect storm, and it happened, and we had to deal with it.
Yeah. No, I can completely relate to that, because it's kind of the way I described the events leading up to my stroke. I was 39 when I had my stroke in 2018, and the cause of your stroke, I understand, is dissection to one of your arteries in your neck, and that's similar with me. That was the cause of my stroke. My cerebral artery it's got a dissection. So yeah, it's something you don't anticipate happening to you until it happens, and then it's about dealing with it afterwards. So you had your stroke in 2012. You're in hospital for a number of weeks. You went through surgery. What was it like in the immediate aftermath then of your stroke? How did your life change in the kind of next few weeks and months?
Yeah, I was lucky. I didn't. They actually decided to opt not to go through surgery, thank goodness. But it was quite a. I was sort of had prepared myself, ready to go, and I never forget the doctors. I couldn't see very well and had a great deal of pain and all that sort of thing, but I was functioning. You know, I could talk and I knew what was going on, sort of thing. But I never forget the doctors sort of sitting down at the foot of the bed, and I said, "Ready, let's go." And they said, "No, we're not going to operate. You're functioning too well. We don't understand how, but we're going to do it another way," which was basically to try to reduce the swelling in other ways. So anyway, I came out. You described. I came out of it, and I was lucky to be at home in Brisbane with my parents were there, and you know, wife and family were still here in London, so that was pretty difficult, you know, coping with the distance, etc. But it was actually a perfect environment because, you know, I had mum and dad looking after me, and I went on your website, you know, about fatigue and all that sort of thing. And I guess my sporting background, I could understand what was going on with my body, but sleep was, you know, and this is real, you know, out of it, jet lag, wake up, don't know where you are, sort of sleep, and for hours and hours on end. But I'd had an injury to my brain, so I knew that you have to give your brain a chance to recover. My father's a clinical psychologist, so he dealt with people that had strokes as well. So, and gradually I had to try and rehabilitate myself. So exercise was quite a big part of that. In Brisbane, got a river that goes through it, and there's beautiful walks along the river. And I sort of literally had to learn to balance and walk again. And I went from, you know, just going around the block to actually ending up, you know, a couple of weeks or months later being able to do 3-hour walks along the river. And so it was a perfect environment for me to recover. But I'd wake up relatively early, have a breakfast, and then go on these little walks, first accompanied by one or two of my parents, but then gradually a bit later on my own. And then I'd come home, have a bit of lunch, and I'd sleep all afternoon, have a bit of dinner, and then go to bed all night. So I was very lucky that it had happened in an environment where, you know, family, familiar, all that sort of thing, and I would be able to be looked after.
Yeah, good. So how has life changed for you, and how have you adapted then over the last 8 years since your stroke, Michael? Have you had to make any changes to the way in which you live and the kind of rhythm of life?
Yeah, so particularly early on, you know, when I say early on, for the first three years or so, I couldn't drive. So with 3 young kids, boys who were very active sportingly, you know, it was a great pressure on my wife, and so the support that she got from friends, etc., was amazing. So, but also, you know, trying to get back into the work environment as well, I found fatigue was a big factor. So I then had to try and, you know, if I was meeting with anybody, it'd be in the mornings when I was a bit fresher, and not do anything in the afternoons in terms of meeting with people. And I'd always said all along, you know, that if you're tired, go and have a sleep, you know, because that's the most important thing. And I forget when I first got home, I said to Isabella, my wife, I said, look, if I'm sleeping on the couch and, you know, in the afternoons, just leave me because, you know, I've had the head injury and I have to, you know, I have to sleep. So just leave me. And she said, oh, so nothing's changed on a Saturday afternoon. So, at least I had an excuse. I think it might, the excuse might be wearing a little bit thin now, but I still sleep on the couch in the afternoon. So not being able to drive was a big change. So luckily we had very good friends and support sort of systems around it. Both of us, you know, Isabella being from Italy and me from being Australia, we didn't have the support of any parents around or grandparents, etc. So it was a pretty tough time. And I then sort of finally, after about 3.5 years or so, got my license back. So that was good. I still don't have all my sight. I lost probably, you know, half my sight, this peripheral vision to the left. And that's been a gradual period of time where I had to get used to that. And I'd still bump into things and, you know, it just reminds you that I don't see to the left. So every now, I just have to be careful, you know, and it's become part of my life. And other than that, there hasn't been many residual issues. You know, I have funny sort of feelings down my left side, but my vision's the main one, and I just have to be aware of that and remember that it's a problem.
Yeah. So just if okay, a couple of questions have just popped in, Michael. One of them from a gentleman called Paul said, "How did you kick fatigue into touch? Do you still suffer with fatigue?" And I like the way he brought rugby into that. But have you been able to kick fatigue into touch, or have you managed to manage it so you're able to deal with your fatigue?
Yeah, I think the fatigue was there for some time, and then, you know, now I tend to try and look after myself in terms of, you know, if I'm tired, I go to bed, and often I'll be in bed before the kids. And, you know, my kids are 13, the youngest is 13, 17 and 19, so, you know, that's not a big thing, but I think I manage it pretty well now, and it's not, I don't think it's an overriding function. I just think it's time that you let it heal itself naturally. I still have that rule that if I'm tired, I, you know, go to bed or have a rest, but I do try and manage it so I'm not, you know, working too hard or burning the candle too many nights out and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I needed to come up with a strategy quite quickly after my stroke, because neurofatigue for me was my biggest debilitating factor. And at the time I had, my youngest daughter was 8, my eldest daughter was 12. So to try and articulate to them how I was feeling when I was at my most fatigued, it was very difficult for them to assimilate how I was feeling. It was not impossible. So that's when I came up with the kind of the traffic light system, which everyone uses in business, and I just then applied it into my fatigue. So I looked at making a visual representation of how I was feeling. So that's how the strategy within the charity is all about green, amber and red. So the way I came up with this, Michael, was, you know, when I'm in my green zone, I can talk and I can walk and I can function almost like I could pre-stroke. Slight concentration deficit, slight left side weakness. As I go through the day and I start to fatigue, I then move into my amber zone. So when I'm in my amber zone, my thought process will slow down. My speech may slow down. I might get words in the wrong order. I might not make any sense. And my left side becomes more noticeably weak, so I'd walk with a limp. If I don't rest at that point and I then move into my red zone, you and I could be sat opposite one another. You could speak to me, and from a cognitive perspective, I'd understand absolutely everything you're saying. But if I try to articulate a response, you may just get a grunt from me. If I try to gesticulate a response, I can move my right side, but slowly. My left side just doesn't really move at all. So that's how I came at the green, amber and red zone. And then what I did was then to manage my fatigue is look at activities that drain more energy from me than others. So my diary is full of green dots, amber dots and red dots. Green dots don't deplete my energy reserves, amber dots deplete them more, and red dots are really, you know, depleting my energy. So I've come up with that as a system to manage my fatigue. And since I come up with that strategy, actually I very, very, very rarely go into my red zone. So that's what's worked for me. And making sure, as you say, sleep when you need it is a real help.
Yeah, that's very good to simplify things into that. That helps you and everybody around you understand where you're at. And you're right with kids. You know, when I first came home, my boys were pretty young, and you know, if you've got a broken arm, to try and tell them that you've had a brain injury and you can't see and all this sort of stuff. It's not easy for them to understand. If you have a broken arm, they understand that something's broken, it will mend, it will come back. So actually, when I first came home, I came up with the idea that I'll get some pirate eye patches for them, and you know, for one evening they're going to all put it over their left eye, and so they have some idea of what it's like, so they can sort of comprehend a little bit and understand what you're going through, and maybe be a bit more sympathetic. I think of that the opposite effect though. You know, my youngest one sort of came up to me and he used to stand to my left and he said, "You can't see me, can you?" And I said, "Well, I can hear you."
Brilliant. Just a question, if that's all right. Someone just posted, Nick, saying, did you get any temper issues after your stroke? Because he's getting some red mist moments, not due to an inability at times to communicate. So did that happen to you, Michael, that you found yourself being, you know, short of temper from time to time?
Yes and no. I mean, I was very lucky. I was able to communicate the whole way through, so that was a big plus for me. Obviously, I guess yes was the answer. That sometimes I would get a bit frustrated with things and what have you, but I'd sort of relate that to tiredness and fatigue. So then, you know, if you're getting a bit grumpy, I mean, even I do that now. You get tired, you get grumpy, you go and have a rest. I mean, it's not always possible, but just get yourself a good night's sleep. I think would help a lot.
Yeah, okay. And one other question, I've just seen Nick's popped in. How long was it, Michael, before you were able to fly long haul?
Well, I was in Australia and had to get back to London, so it was probably almost 2 months later, and my wife had come out, Isabella had come out with me to bring me home from Brisbane to London, and there was a bit of a setback. I had a scan and there was a bit of a setback, and they said, "No, you better not fly." So Isabella came back home to the family here, and I had to wait about another 2 weeks or so before I came back. But probably only about 2 months before I flew back to London. But then it was very much, you know, very much calm at home, not working too much, not doing too much, just really sort of taking my time.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so if we could just now talk a little bit around exercise and activity post-stroke. So we came up very early in the evolution of A Stroke of Luck with a bit of analogy around people that have had strokes. If we just take it and think about a rugby pitch, you've got two halves of the rugby pitch and you've got the halfway line. And let's look at the left half of the rugby pitch. It's densely populated with people that have had strokes that identify as stroke victims. So these are people, when they look in a mirror, unfortunately, what they see in the mirror is somebody that's had a stroke and they can't see the wood for the trees. It's a very, very negative perception of life. And, you know, life's a very difficult place for them to be, potentially physically, but definitely emotionally as well. And the other half of the pitch, which isn't as densely populated, you've got stroke survivors. And they're people that have had strokes that have kind of dusted themselves off a little bit because maybe they got a natural positive disposition for life, but are able to see a route way through life post-stroke. Now, on the halfway line is what we're saying is a stroke of luck. And what we're trying to do is build a bridge to support people that have had strokes from victim status to survivor status through the use of physical activity. So exercise, being as fit and healthy as you possibly can. Hence the partnership with the Stroke Association to create these stroke-specific exercise and activity videos. So coming from such a high-level sporting background that you have done, Michael, what emphasis did you place on being active as part of your recovery process, both immediately after stroke and then through the last 8 years since you've had your stroke?
Yeah, as I sort of alluded to a little earlier, movement and just very gentle exercise to start with was a very big part of my recovery. And it was very gradual from, you know, the first time I came out of intensive care up into the general ward. I was in a room on my own, luckily, and I couldn't walk or do anything, and, you know, had to call the nurse to go to the bathroom or whatever. And then, but I also sort of, one day I sort of plotted my way through to the bathroom and made it back, etc. And then there was a huge amount of satisfaction about that. So what I'm getting to is setting attainable goals, you know, no matter how small they are, but you know, if you get there, and once you get there, make sure you celebrate that. I don't mean going out and paying the town rent or anything like that, but just understand that you've achieved something. And then the next one, because we all, you know, sitting in my hospital bed, I wanted to see again, I wanted to walk again, I wanted to, you know, go back to my normal life, etc. You know, huge, big goals, but I knew I couldn't do that tomorrow. That was my one down the track, and then those gradual goals along the way. But exercise, general wellness and health, and, you know, eating well and sleeping well, within yourself, exercising, it was a huge part of it. It still is. It still absolutely is.
Okay, very good, very good. So you're a trustee of the Stroke Association. Clearly, you're very passionate about supporting, therefore, other stroke survivors in their life after stroke. And it's great that A Stroke of Luck and the Stroke Association are working in partnership together. In this current time, with lockdown and people being in isolation, it's my perception, after speaking with a number of stroke survivors, that anxiety levels are higher and potentially depression levels are higher in the stroke survivor community. So have you got any advice that you could give to stroke survivors on how they better deal with lockdown and isolation? You know, hopefully this isn't going to be for too much longer, but nevertheless, it is a challenge for an awful lot of people that have had strokes. So have you got any advice and coping strategies that you think would be beneficial for stroke survivors to adopt?
Yeah, I mean, this sort of what we're in at the moment, there's been a lot of talk about when we come out of this, when it ends, and all that sort of thing. And, you know, I tend to try and think more around the process of, you know, this is here. How are we going to live with it going forward? So how are we going to cope with it going forward? So the sort of coping mechanisms that we look at now, whether it be for stroke survivors or whatever, we're going to have to take those forward and develop them going forward. I think it's probably trying to be as healthy as you can. I mean, and doing exercises, finding exercises within the house, within your environment, looking for assistance as well for stroke survivors that aren't quite as mobile as they would like to be. So it's a matter of each individual, with the assistance of family and support groups around, to try and find what works for them. You know, for me here, it's about trying to get out at least once a day and do some good walks and those sort of things. And, you know, just generally, you know, watching what we're eating, your sleep, you know, just the general sort of stuff I think is pretty important. But developing a right system of, you know, coping mechanisms, each individual's got to find what works for them, I think.
Yeah, agreed. If you don't mind, just one more question. It's come in from Paul Michael saying, did a competitive edge from sport help you in your recovery? And if I can just preface that with, for me, I think it did. I haven't been a sportsman to your level, but nevertheless, I learned a lot around psychological skills whilst I was a swimmer, and how to cope with situations, anxiety, you know, all of those things around being an athlete. And I believe that helped me in my recovery journey. Did you use any of your kind of psychological skills that you'd have learned whilst being a top international rugby player to help you in your recovery journey?
Yeah, yes, definitely. And that was you know, everybody said, oh, you know, you've survived the stroke because you're, you know, a rugby player and you're fit and healthy and all that sort of thing. No, I was lucky. I was lucky to get through my stroke. As it was just one of those things. But then, when the recovery period started, literally still while I was in intensive care, to have that understanding of having been through sort of, not as difficult as stroke, but having been on the sporting field or training or whatever it is, to understand that what your body's capable of and what it needs to recover, etc., was a big part of it, a really big part of it. I sort of understood what I was going through, and so it was a big help. So being a sports person, having had the stroke in that recovery process was I think a huge advantage for me. Not so much that, you know, when the stroke happened, oh, being a sportsman, that means you survived. No, we were lucky. And then that kicks in. It kicks in a big way. And, you know, competitive spirit, Yes, but you've got to be careful over that, because a competitive spirit, I talked about, you know, these really attainable small little steps along the way, the attainable goals. You know, being competitive, you want to go, I want to go and run a marathon next week, you know, and so you try really hard to get that, and that can be detrimental to your recovery. So that's where I was very careful to just, you know, just go what I was capable with, then rest, and then go again. Just gradual, very gradual, and so patience is a big thing. Being patient, you know, with my sight. You know, I love playing golf, and I couldn't hit the golf ball. I didn't play golf for a year because of, you know, I didn't want to sort of disrupt the arteries and all that. But when I came back, I couldn't hit the golf ball, and I used to play off 7, so I was a reasonable player, and it was so frustrating to me. But then I put my goal kicking rugby hat on and said, you know, your body knows what to do. Just give it time to discover and work out how to do it. So, I mean, I'd miss putts this far by that much. And, you know, my friends would never give me a putt, thanks very much, because they knew I wasn't very good at it. But gradually, I just let my body discover how to deal with it. And it took a while, and it was very, very frustrating. I still grip my hands, but over time, it sort of came back, and my body just let it happen. So I think from a goal kicking point of view and a sports point of view, to understand that process, and it takes time, you need to be patient and don't sort of push it, was a big factor.
Yeah. Nick's just mentioned, he just said the word team. So you mentioned earlier on, Michael, that where you had your stroke in Brisbane, you went to then, you know, stay with your parents, and you had that support network around you. We've created the analogy at the Stroke of Luck around a stroke survivor having their A team around them. And what I mean by that is that you, as a stroke survivor, bring a lot of people around you to support you in your ongoing recovery journey. So a stroke survivor becomes the captain of their A team, and their A team is made up of family members, friends, clinicians, other experts, charities, and you play to the strengths of the individuals that are part of your A team to support you then in your ongoing recovery journey. And I think that's critical for the success of somebody's recovery, that they have this support network around them. And it's the ability to understand the attributes and the skills that people have as part of your team to play to their strengths. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Totally agree with that. And but also, I agree with that, everything you've said there, but I was also very aware that, and tried to do a bit of work with this, you know, with the Stroke Association, and going, is that when a stroke survivor comes out of hospital and all that sort of thing, and you know, you've got your support network around you, hopefully, and that's working well, but it does affect that support network as well, whether it be your wife, your kids, your parents, whatever, you know, it affects them in a big way, and often there's not a lot of support for them, because it's all about the stroke survivor, it's all about me, and actually those around you get affected hugely. And I was quite aware of that, but there was not much I could do because I was focusing on me. So what they need, those support networks that the individual has needs their own support network as well, because often it's really tough, because it changes their lives as well. It really does. And it's all about the stroke survivor, not about them. So it's important to understand and realise that other people are going through stressful situations as well.
Yeah, no, agreed. Okay, I've kind of come to the end of my questions, Michael. Is there anything else that you wanted to add or to ask of me at all?
Yeah, how are you? How are you doing at the moment? How are you coping with everything? And secondly, congratulations on setting this up. It's a terrific program that you've got going, and I hope it's sort of everybody's sort of taking notice. I'm very pleased that the Stroke Association, you've done a partnership with them, which is terrific. I've just got the dog. He wants to go outside. So while you answer that, I'm going to open the door. So yeah, but how are you?
No, I'm doing fine, thanks, Michael. I think part of the reason that I think my recovery journey has been a positive one is because I've had a focus, and that focus has been setting up the charity and striving to achieve something. And achieving something to me will be helping just one survivor. But if we can help lots and lots of survivors, you know, I'd be delighted. So that's been a real cathartic part of my recovery journey. Then when I take into account how I've come up with that management system, not just on my own, but with the support of people around me on how I manage my fatigue, I really think that, you know, you mentioned the word luck on the reason you survived your stroke, and I completely concur with that. I didn't survive my stroke for any other reason than I got lucky. Yeah. And I also have been incredibly lucky that the effects that I experienced post-stroke are minimal compared to so many other stroke survivors. So I don't think I've got too much to complain about, in fairness. So yeah, I'm delighted with my recovery, and the Stroke of Luck charity has really been something that's kind of made me get up and get out of bed and focus on what I need to do every single day. It's basically taken it's taken an awful lot of my focus and energy, and I see that as an incredibly positive part of my recovery journey. Yeah,
and I mean, we both very similar in that we had the stroke, we were lucky, and then we've recovered to a very good place. But you know, for the first sort of while after my stroke, I definitely had some survivor guilt. You know, why me? Why am I like this? Why did I get through this and other people didn't? And then a friend of mine in Brisbane, actually, it was while I was recovering. It's a long story, but I won't go into now. It's in the book, but it's and it's not a plug, by the way. But we were sitting having a coffee, and I said, well, what's the difference between we met another stroke survivor who was really in a bad way, and I said to my friend, I said, well, you know, why aren't I like that? Why am I like this? I feel really guilty about it and feel bad about it. He said, no, you shouldn't feel bad about it. You should be thrilled about it. And what you need to do is actually go and use the fact that you can help others and really throw yourself into doing that. So he was right. And that sort of started to get me over that survivor's guilt that I felt. And the other way was when I got back here after 2 months, and after a little while, we had a little bit of a gathering for all the people that had sort of supported my family while I was away, and friends and that sort of thing. And you can see they came to the door and they'd look at me and they'd go, oh, there's nothing wrong with him. Because, you know, I look like this. There's nothing wrong with him. I was all a, you know, blow up and, you know, Michael being a prima donna again and all this sort of thing. You literally see it. And so that was difficult, because I know what I went through. And I know the fact that, you know, I had problems going forward and I had to deal with them. But people sort of wanted to dismiss it. So there was the survivor guilt, and then also this, you know, oh, there's nothing wrong with him, you know. It's minor stroke, little thing, you know. So yeah, no, absolutely. Psychologically, that was really difficult for me to cope with.
Yeah, it was. I mirror that exactly. So when I first had the stroke, you know, I could talk and I could walk, albeit I can function quite as well as I am now. But nevertheless, I had that survivor guilt that you talk of, and also there seems to be a real lack of understanding. And I think it's an educational perspective, because I was ignorant to stroke until I had one myself. There's a real lack of understanding around neurofatigue and, you know, the kind of hidden disabilities that people have. So unless it's something physical, often it goes unnoticed. So the neurofatigue being a big thing. You know, when you say to someone, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, what often they hear is, you've been out on the beach, you've had a late night, it's that level of fatigue, and it's just not like that at all.
Yeah, or you're soft, or you know,
or you're soft.
I'm tired, you know, oh, well, you know, you're just soft, you know. It's not that at all. It's not that at all. And it's really difficult to explain to people. I used to catch the train every day into Waterloo. And walking through airports and Waterloo Station, where there's unexpected sort of people coming from different directions, I still find that difficult, because I can't see them coming from the left. And every now and then I'll bump into somebody, and they'll, you know, say, oh, watch where you're going, mate, and swear at me and carry on. I just say, well, let me tell you why I bumped into you. And you know, you want to wear a sign around you, you know, I've had a stroke and I can't see to the left. But it's sort of, and there's no reason why people shouldn't, you know, see me and think I'm normal, but in terms of, you know, my physical abilities. But it's quite sometimes difficult to deal with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this live. I really, really appreciate it.
No, terrific, Craig. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and meeting you. And congratulations once again on what you're doing. It's a great bit of work, really simple to understand. And I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people. And I look forward to catching up with you again soon. And thank you to everyone for tuning in and listening.
No, absolutely. Thanks ever so much, Michael. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Stay safe. Have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so I hope everybody has enjoyed that conversation with Michael. Incredibly inspirational fella. I feel incredibly privileged to have had Michael as a guest. And next week, we've got Megan joining us for our Instagram Live. Megan competed, she had a stroke in 2013. She then became an international cyclist and competed in the 2016 Paralympics in Rio and ended up winning the gold medal for Great Britain. So she's an ambassador of A Stroke of Luck. She'll be our guest on the Friday Live sessions next week. So please make sure you come back and tune in and hear about Megan's story. Okay, it's bye from me for now. Have a fantastic bank holiday weekend, and I'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you very much indeed. Bye now.